But I thought we'd just start by, I can't think of a better way to start this morning than just by asking you, do you want to hear the most annoying sound in the world? How many of you want to hear it? There are always sick people in an audience. Well, whether you want to hear it or not, I'm going to give you the opportunity to hear it because I'm just that nice. And I'm feeling that spirit in the new year. So here you go, ladies and gentlemen, get ready. The most annoying sound in the world. I'm hitting the snooze button. We're done. Seriously, like you heard that and you had a guttural reaction, didn't you? Especially when you hear that noise on Monday morning. How many of you love a good Monday morning? Right? Again, there's always sick people in the audience. Yeah, Monday morning, that noise goes off, and you're trying to slap it away, and you're trying to make it go away. And I'm one of these individuals. As soon as I hear that alarm clock, like I'm up. And in fact, I think I told you last week, I'm kind of weird in the fact that I can think about what time I want to get up, and I'll wake up like 2 minutes before that time. So I get up, and if I'm not careful, I will just rush head on into my day. My wife is the polar opposite of that. She is the one that she will hit the snooze button 25, 30 times. You know, and just keep hitting the snooze. I'm like, why do you even set the alarm? I don't understand, but you're off to the races, right? You get in the shower and you're trying to wake up and you go in there and you get your cup of coffee. I hope that maybe this week you began a time of stillness during your morning. But even then, sometimes you're already starting to think about it. If you're not careful, you're already starting to be gearing up and thinking about what's going to be happening for the entire day. You get ready. You get dressed, and at that point, you know, in my life, it's about the fact that the kids have got to be up too. And so, you know, you're starting to get them up, and nobody, you know, there's not a child. My kids have got to get up at like 6 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, no 6-year-old should have to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Let me just say that for the record, if there's anybody in school administration out there. No parent should have to wake up a six-year-old in the morning. But so, you know, it's the fight, it's the battle. You get them to the bus. Maybe you go to the gym in the morning. I try to most mornings, and then get back and get dressed. And then you get in the car and you take off and you hit the traffic. Oh boy, how many of you drive? To Washington, D.C. every morning for work? Look at that. It's the exact same people that like the alarm clock sound and like Monday mornings. I don't understand. Listen, we're going to start a special prayer group for those of you who have to drive to D.C. Because it's crazy town, right? You get out into the middle of the traffic, and as if the stress that you're headed toward in your job is not enough, you've got to experience the traffic before you get there. And these people that are on the road. I just got to get this off my chest. When you're pressing your horn behind me, the sound waves are not moving my car faster. The sound waves will not transport my car through the car that stopped in front of me, so lay off your horn already. I think I just need to take a moment of stillness myself now. But right, and then you get to work. This last maybe Monday or Tuesday, you went into work, probably Tuesday, and after the holiday time, you just sat there in front of that computer thinking, I really don't want to hit go on the email because it's going to pour in, right? Or, hey, listen, I've got so many jobs or projects that I've got to do that they've been backing up over this time. Oh, no. But here goes nothing. And they start to pour in, and then you start to have to deal with all the problems. And then there's the meetings, or there's the jobs, you know, there's the projects, and you just go. And then finally you get to lunch. You decide, hey, it's time to go to lunch, and maybe you can step away from the madness for just a second. And you decide today I'm going to get off campus because somebody's going to try to talk to me if I go to the lunchroom, and I just need the space. And you get there you get to the restaurant only to stand in line with all your coworkers who decided to do the same thing. Right? Then you go back to work, and you go through the entire mess for the afternoon, and you line up your to-dos of what you got to do in the morning. Then you get back in the car. You get back on the road. Some of you are like, why did I come here today? I'm going to experience all that tomorrow. Why is he putting me through this? You get back on the road with the same person behind you beeping their horn. How does that happen? And then you get home. You got stuff to do at home, don't you? I mean, you've got, lawns to mow. You've got food to cook. You've got kids to take to all of their different practices and everywhere else. Then finally you get them all showered and bathed, and you get them to bed, and you recognize now it's only about 20 minutes until you need to go to bed too. And then you lay down and you think, oh, finally some peace. And then that's when all of the problems that you have to deal with start to leak in, right? Your mind starts going 20 miles a minute, and then you lay there for the next 3 hours. And at some point, in some weird way, you find a way to, and then 20 minutes later, the most annoying sound in the world. How many of you feel better now that you came today? Are you feeling better? I got a question. People used to ask you when you were small, when you were a child, they used to say, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? How many of you remember that question? What do you want to be when you grow up? Now, I've got a question for you today. How many of you were thinking about that schedule when you answered that question? Huh? Were you thinking about the craziness that is your life when you were a kid, thinking about what it is that you wanted to be when you grow up? Here's what I've discovered. I've discovered that the reality is most of us have gotten to a place in life where we haven't quite realized yet, but maybe even in this question this morning, we'll begin to realize this, that we answered the wrong question as we became adults. Because you see, the question that people used to ask us is, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the question that we've answered with our lives is, what do you want to do when you grow up? And there's a big difference between answering the question of what do you want to be and what do you want to do? But most of us have spent our lives in a pursuit of what we want to do rather than what it is that we want to be. And if we're looking right now and we're finding ourselves stressed out, and we're finding ourselves maybe even resentful, and we're finding ourselves living in a certain amount of fear, and we're finding ourselves in the middle of all kinds of negative emotions, then the reality says that we have probably headed in a direction in which we've tried to answer the question of what do we want to do when we grow up, and we have not answered the question of what do we want to be. So how do we get back on course? How do we turn this whole mess around? This ship, massive ship called our lives that's headed the wrong direction. How do we turn it around to where we can start to have some real positive emotional state versus the underlying negativity that we consistently live in? Well, secret's going to be out right here. You ready? You have to have a true encounter with Jesus Christ. It's the only thing that can do it. A true encounter with Jesus is it. In fact, I want you to go with me, if you would please, to Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10, beginning in verse 38. Here's a story that if you've been around church for any time, you know really well. And if you haven't, well, then I'm going to introduce you to a great story. Here's what it says. As Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem. Here's Jesus. We find him once again where we find him over and over again. We find him on the road. Jesus was not some seminary professor. He wasn't some pastor who sat in his office all day. By the way, our pastors don't sit in their offices all day. He wasn't that type. He was out on the road. He was out where people were. He was he was where people had the greatest need. Jesus and his disciples, they were continuing on the road on their way to Jerusalem, and they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him. Obviously, she was waiting for him. From what we can probably assess according to the way that this story is told, this was probably the first time. There's going to be other encounters with Jesus and Martha and her sister, but this was probably the first encounter. Because Martha had probably heard the stories of Jesus that had been circulating around the countryside, the stories of this guy who was able to heal people, who was able to turn water into wine, who was able to walk on water, who was able to feed 5,000. All of these stories had been circulating, and the word had been getting out. And so when Jesus shows up in this village, Martha is there, and she is waiting for him. She's waiting for this special guy that she's heard so much about. And she welcomes him to her home. And her sister, Mary, sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he taught. So Jesus has arrived and is at the house. This is the moment that Martha has been waiting for. She invites Jesus in. Jesus sits down, and and naturally Martha it sounds as if she's had a bunch of people come over, right? A bunch of people are coming over, and Jesus is sitting there, and Jesus is going to do what Jesus does. He's going to start to share truth. And he begins to share that truth, and while he's sharing that truth, Mary, the sister of Martha, is listening real intently, and she gets in there, and she sits down close at his feet. She wants a first-row Jesus experience. But Martha, remember, she was out there waiting for him. She wanted him to come over, and she is in the kitchen, and she is busy making it happen. I would imagine that Martha probably considered herself to be a pretty good entertainer. I mean, you don't wait on the road to invite Jesus to your house if you don't think you're a good entertainer, right? I would imagine that Martha probably believed herself to be a pretty good cook. Because you don't wait for Jesus and invite him over unless you think that you are a pretty good cook. So she's in there doing what she does best. She's entertaining, and she is cooking, and she's trying to make sure that everybody there, most importantly Jesus, is going to have a first-class experience. And all of us would look and say, that's a good thing, right? It's a good thing. If you're going to have Jesus over, then make it a first-class experience. But Martha, listen to what this says. But Martha was distracted. Martha was distracted by the big dinner that she was preparing. Did you hear that? According to the point of this story, the point of this story is not that Martha is cooking a big dinner. Martha is distracted. She thinks that what she's there to do is what's important, doesn't she? She thinks that entertaining Jesus is what's important. But according to this story says that she was distracted, that that's a distraction. She came to Jesus, and she said, Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits there? Some of you right now, you're thinking about that sibling, aren't you? Stop it. That my sister just sits here while I do all the work. It's been like that my whole life. Tell her to come here and help me. She's sitting there at Jesus' feet. How dare she? See? But the Lord said to her, my dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all of these details. Think about all the stress that you just went through as I described Monday morning. As you start to think about everything that you've got to do tomorrow, maybe everything that you've got to do this afternoon, maybe everything that you've got to do this next week, how many of us, we find ourselves like stressed out? Completely worried. in a complete, total negative emotional state. According to this story, that's all a distraction from what's really important. Jesus says this to Martha. He says, there is only one thing worth being concerned about. Just it. Now, all that to-do stuff, there's only one thing worth being concerned about, and Mary has discovered it. She's figured it out. And he says it will not be taken away from her. Mary has discovered it. You know what I think is interesting is Jesus doesn't even tell her what it is, does he? You're like, he's not even a good teacher. I mean, a good teacher would say, here's the point. I want to make sure that you get this. Jesus doesn't. Jesus said, she's got it. It's not going to be taken away from her. Mary, it's up to you to figure it out. You figure out, Mary, what it is that I'm talking about. Plain and simple. Martha wanted to do for Jesus, didn't she? Most of us, we've spent most of our life wanting to do. Maybe there's those of us that we're guilty for wanting to do for Jesus. I know people that they get into the ministry, that they feel like their call to the ministry is because they want to do something great for Jesus. When in fact, Jesus doesn't need us to do anything great for him because he's great. Right? Those people that get into ministry because they want to do something great for him are also the people that get out of ministry because they're burnt out. They can't handle it anymore. But there's also people that you get up every day and you want to go do something. You want to do something great for your family, right? You feel like it's your responsibility to do something that is great for your family. You feel like it is your responsibility to do something that is great with your career. And you're consistently focused on doing some more. Can I tell you what the to-do life is a desire for? It's a desire to impress somebody. People who live a to-do life want to do nothing more than impress somebody. Look at what Martha was trying to do with Jesus, right? The entire point of having Jesus over for dinner was not to learn something from Jesus. It wasn't to be more like Jesus. What did Martha want to do? She wanted to impress Jesus. She was in there making her best food. She was making sure that the house was clean and orderly. She was waiting on him. She wanted him to come over. She wanted to impress him. The to-do life is all about trying to impress somebody. There are those of you that you have excelled unbelievably in academia, that you have earned the highest of degrees and are still earning more. And when you get down to the deepest core of it, although that is a beautiful and it is a wonderful thing, when you get down to the deepest core of it, it's because somebody, when you were young, said you're not smart enough. And you're looking, and you're thinking, with one more degree, I'll prove it. With one more advancement of my career, I will prove to my mom or my dad that didn't think I was going to be anything or go anywhere or accomplish anything. With one more step, I'll make it happen. Constantly trying to impress. Once I have that house, once I drive that car, all those girls that rejected me back in high school, they'll see it on Facebook. Once I just take a little bit more, and once I just do a little bit more, and when I get to that point, and our entire life is built, it's built on doing stuff because we're trying to impress somebody. We want somebody to be impressed. That was Martha. She just wanted to impress Jesus, but then there was Mary. And Mary, she just wanted to be with Jesus. Didn't need to impress him at all. She didn't try to do anything for him or anything like that. And you know, I think that Mary, she didn't care if she impressed Jesus because she was just impressed by Jesus. Because I got to tell you something. There is nothing, you need to hear this loud and clear today. There is nothing that you can do to impress Jesus. He's already impressed by you. He created you. He loves you. Everybody who's looked at you in your life and said that you are not smart enough, Jesus never said that. Jesus said, I gave you all the intellectual power that you'll ever need. Those of you who someone has looked at you and said, hey, listen, you're not good looking enough. Jesus has said, you are created in my image. You're as beautiful as I designed you to be. Jesus, there's nothing you can do to impress him. There's not one more accomplishment that you can do or one more plaque that you can hang on the wall. Jesus is already impressed by you. He already completely, totally loves you for who you are, exactly where you are, exactly like you are. You don't need to do anything to impress him. You say, Pastor John, what does that mean? Does that mean like all this stuff that I have achieved in life, that it's not worth anything, or that I've done it for the wrong motives, or you know, what are you trying to say? What are you trying to get at today? Because in some way, shape, or form, if you're really listening to what's being said this morning, it has the potential to shake the very core, the very foundation of all that you hold dear. It could radically change the way that you live your life starting from the time that you walk out of here. So what does it mean? You say, I've gotten to this point. The ship has sailed. And now you're looking and saying, hey, I've built my life off of what to do rather than what to be. How do I know the difference? How do I know if everything that I've accomplished, if everything that I'm going at is the right motive? How do I know whether or not I'm Mary or whether or not I'm Martha in this story? Well, I would answer that by the same way that Jesus answered it. Because here's what Jesus says to Martha. He says, my dear Martha, why are you worried and upset over all of these details? You see what Jesus goes after? Jesus goes after what a Martha's emotional state is right at this moment. That's where he heads toward. He goes straight to Martha and he says, how are you feeling? Can I tell you something? God gave you feelings for a reason. He did. And you know, one of the things that I try to do most of my life has been ignore them. Like seriously, like to ignore my feelings. Because I was one of those that like, hey, listen, just because it hurts doesn't mean I shouldn't do it. Right? I mean, if you played any type of sports growing up, you were taught that, weren't you? Like, you know, the pain threshold. One of my roommates in seminary, he was actually headed toward becoming an Olympic athlete, a wrestler. He had been a state champion and all kinds of other things. And he used to talk to me about how in practice that they would, in wrestling practice, that they would practice their pain threshold. And they would put themselves in these various positions and holds and cause pain to one another. And the goal was to see how much and how long you could take it. I'm like, that is a stupid sport. That's just dumb. God bless all of you who are wrestlers. You're wonderful people, and I did not mean you were dumb because I know you could kill me, okay? I'm just saying something's a little weird. Right? But like, I mean, that's an extreme example, but you learn that in sports, right? Like, I mean, hey, just run through it. Don't worry about your feelings. Just make it happen. We're told to kind of forget those feelings all the time and go with what's in your head. Can I just go ahead and tell you, God gave you feelings for a reason. And you should pay attention to them. I am not saying that you should act off of them, but you should pay attention to them. You should know what they're saying to you. Jesus goes straight to Martha and he says, Martha, you are worried right now. You are stressed out. He's saying, I need you to pay attention to this. These feelings are inside of you because something is wrong with you. when you're beginning to feel all of that negativity, when you're beginning to feel all of that worry and all of that stress, something is not exactly right, and you need to start to try to get something in tune. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that there are people that deal with depression and all kinds of other things that can be chemical imbalances, and those take special care and special professional help. But what I'm talking about is just the normal state of the large majority of us, who live our lives in really negative, stressed out ways, never paying attention to that, but we just keep on doing what we're doing because, doggone it, we've got something to do and we got something to accomplish because we got somebody to impress. And Jesus is saying, I need you to pay attention to your emotional state, Martha. Your emotional state right now is telling you that something is not right. And ladies and gentlemen, what I'm here to share with you right now is the fact that if you're living your life right now with these feelings, listen to me real closely. If you're living your life in a whole lot of fear, you got a lot of fear that's going on. You've got a lot of resentment that you feel a lot of times. Meaning what Martha is. What has Martha got a problem with right here? She's got a problem with resentment, doesn't she? I mean, Martha's having all of this negative stress going on. She's got all these negative emotions taking place. And who does she blame? Her sister. Because my sister's not doing what I think my sister ought to do, I feel this way. Does Jesus allow that to happen? Does Jesus look at us at all and say, hey, listen, you can blame your feelings on somebody else? All that stress, all that stuff you're feeling in life, that's not somebody else's fault. If you're feeling fear, resentment, stress, if you find yourself to be a pushy person, maybe stingy, generosity doesn't come real easily to you. You find that too often you're judgmental. You look at a situation or you look at a person, sometimes a person that you don't even know, and you begin to build a story about them. God got me on this one not too long ago. I was in the gym in the morning, and there's this one guy that he's in the gym every morning, and he is just absolutely, positively intense, if you know what I'm talking about. Okay, I mean, he's not like a big guy, I'm being nice here. He doesn't even really look like he's in shape. And how? I don't know. Because this guy is working out intense, like every single morning. And he's got this look on his face. And I'm and he'll get off a machine, and I'll be on another machine, and you know what I'm thinking to myself? I'm like, I hope he doesn't want the machine I'm on. Because I'm scared. Because he's intense. Until there's this other guy that I talk to in there quite often who's a Christ follower also. And I watched him, my friend, go over to this guy one day, and they start talking, and they start laughing, and they start smiling. And I've been building a story about this intense guy now for weeks. Right? I've been building this story about this guy that he must be a jerk. I'll bet he treats his family awful. I mean, seriously, he probably works out so he can beat his wife. It's terrible. I'm telling you, like, I'm building this awful story. And then he's talking to my Christian friend, and they're laughing and smiling. I'm like, I guess I got that one wrong, didn't I? Right? We have this ability sometimes to just be judgmental toward people we haven't even ever met. Including to the person that we make all the stories up because they're honking the horn behind us. Right? You find yourself to be judgmental? Do you find yourself to be harsh? Is the words that come out of your mouth like quicker to be hurtful or hard? Do you worry a lot? Do you try to control everything? Or are you feeling these things? Because these are the feelings of one who's living a to-be life versus a to-do life. Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 says this, but the Holy Spirit produces this kind of fruit in our lives. Let me ask you, in your life, do you feel love a lot? Do you feel joy? Do you feel peace, patience, kindness, goodness? Are you gentle? Would your family say you're gentle? Do you have a life that of faith? Do you believe big? What about self-control? Do you have that? Which one are you feeling? Because that's the one that'll tell you right there as to how you're living your life. Whether you're living a to-do life or you're living a to-be life, that's the one that will tell you right there. How are you feeling? Because if your life is largely love, joy, peace, then ladies and gentlemen, you're living a to-be life. God bless you. Stay at it. And people's lives are being changed around you. But if you're living a to-do life, then you're living in all that kind of negative pressure and stress that I just talked about. That is how you know. Here is the way for us to continue forward to be the difference. We've just got to be. We've got to give up a life that is a life of to-do. There was a young girl, her mom had just bought her a jump rope, and they were out there on their front porch, and and her mom was kind of starting to show her a little bit, and the priest was walking down the road. And as the priest was walking down the road, he happened to be a jump rope expert. And he walked over and he started talking to the lady and the little girl, and he started showing her how to jump the rope. And he handed it back over to her, and sure enough, she kind of started to jump, and after a little while, she got it 1, and then after a little while longer, she got it 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, and she was getting pretty good at it, and when she was getting pretty good at it, and actually the priest and mom were standing there, and they were just clapping, and, yeah, you're doing a great job, and the little girl started, getting happy and kind of like drifting away, jumping rope all the way down the street. And the mom and the priest, they just stood there and they continued to talk for a little bit longer. And as they did that, the little girl came back and she had the rope in her hand. She wasn't jumping anymore and she didn't have a smile on her face. She looked down and she looked depressed. She walked over and she said, "Mommy," she said, "I can jump rope, but I do a whole lot better when people are clapping." Can I just tell you something, folks? Let me tell you why you need to live a life that is to be and not to do. Because somebody needs you to be the one that is clapping in their lives. That's what somebody needs. Recently, we've been spending a whole lot of time out there on mission, so to speak. And I got to tell you, in my time, just in my brief time of being out there, I've noticed a whole lot of things. There was one particular day when Dr. Drew and I, we were driving down near the Transformation Center, and as he and I pulled up to a stop sign, no kidding, 2 prostitutes began to make their way toward our vehicle. Because guess what? When men are driving nice cars in areas like that in Baltimore, guess what the young ladies on the street think they're there for? Can I tell you something? Ladies, hear me loud and clear. Those young ladies on those streets that are selling their bodies, they need you. They need you to be the one that's clapping in their lives this year. You want to make this negative stress go away? Be the one that claps in their lives this year. That's what being the difference will be all about. You know what they need to hear? They need to hear the stories of your own broken sexuality. You say, no, they don't. I've kept that quiet. I've kept that in the closet. I'm not going to tell anybody about that abuse in my past. I'm not going to tell anybody about that mistake of days gone by. No, can't you see? I'm sitting here today and I'm in church and I'm a different person and that's not me anymore. And you're right, it's not you anymore. You are different. You are changed. And those young ladies need that hope. And they need you in their life. That same Transformation Center, I saw a man walk in, and I'm telling you, man, this guy was high as a kite. On my most drunken day, he made me look sober. Completely. And you know what? Men, women, that guy needs you. You know why? Because he is high as a kite, because he's scared to death. Because he's afraid. Because inside he's broken. He hurts. He's lonely. He's more lonely than you could ever imagine. And you've sat back and you've not approached those type of people in your past, right? Because you grew up with somebody in your house that was high as a kite, that maybe hit you, that hurt you, that abused you, that treated you wrongly. And you've stayed away from that type of ministry, and you've stayed away from those type of people because you're so hurt and you're so broken by what they've done. But you know what? They need you. You know why they need you? They need you because they've got a son or daughter that they've treated like your mom or dad treated you. And by you going to them, and by you caring for them, and by you loving them, you are sending them a message that maybe there's hope with their own family. That if you could forgive your mom or dad, then they can be forgiven too. They need you to be the difference. They need you to clap. In their lives, there's a gang member that's down there on the streets, and you know what? He's rough and he's tough, and you just look at him wrong way, and he'll be more than happy to pull that gun and shoot you. But inside, he's a scared little boy. And you know why he's gravitated? You know why he's gravitated toward the streets? You know why he's gravitated toward the gang? Because there, somebody looked and said, by doing this and acting this way, you'll be a man. Here, I'll give you authority. Here, I'll make you something. Yeah, you might get beat at home, but here, you're going to be somebody. We'll give you a title. We'll give you a place. And you know what he needs? He needs a real man in his life, guys. He needs a real man in his life to show him that there is a better way and that love is way stronger than a gun. He needs you to be the one that claps. He needs you to be the one that's the difference. That mean, terrible, awful boss, he needs you to invite him over for dinner. He needs you to take him out for lunch. He needs you to show him that, hey, listen, I don't care how you treat me or everybody else at the workplace. You know something? I love you. He needs you. That homeless person, the one you drive by all the time, the one you see because they've got their territory marked out at that place where you shop, the one that has probably approached you multiple times that you've looked at and said, hey, no, can I tell you what they need from you this year? They need a hug from you. You know why they need a hug from you? Because they haven't had human touch in a long time. Because they haven't had the chance to have a shower. And they don't think that they're worth being touched, and they don't smell that great. They need a hug from you. They need to know that they are loved. You want all of that negative, terrible emotion to disappear, ladies and gentlemen. Then quit worrying about what you're trying to do this year to impress somebody. And be the one that goes out there and claps in somebody else's life. Yesterday morning, our staff got a text from Pastor Chris, our student pastor. And he gave us the absolutely terrible news that his wife's oldest brother had passed away suddenly. Completely unexpected. Myself and Gwen, everybody was here at the church making this place happen, trying to get everything back up to order for today after the flood. Myself and Gwen, we went over to Pastor Chris' wife's mother's house. And we walked in to the family there, and there were a lot of tears right from the get-go, right? And that's what happens when somebody passes away, especially unexpectedly, especially somebody that's loved. There was a lot of tears, and we hugged a lot, and Pastor Chris was standing, he was over there on the phone, and he was crying while he was talking with somebody on the phone, and you could hear that there was a whole lot of people that were in the living room, and we walked in the living room and we started, talking and just kind of hearing a little bit about the story and all that. But it wasn't only a couple minutes after that, after being there, that the tone of the house kind of began to change, and you started to hear like a ton of laughter. Just a ton of laughter. And as the time grew on, there more and more laughter just abounded, and stories started to come out about Dennis and his life, and stories about how he'd been a football coach for 30 years and impacted literally hundreds of young men on the football field. And amazing stuff. There was no doubt as they were talking about Dennis's life, his entire family there was nothing even close to them being able to say that he wasn't a Christ follower. They're like, he followed Jesus. And I was listening to that, and I was thinking about how sad this was. This was a sudden death, right? This is the moment that we all dread. We dread this moment for our own selves, and we dread this moment for our others that we're close to. This was that moment that none of us expects, gone. But the energy of his life was not. The energy of his life was alive and well, and that was an energy that was showing through of love and joy and peace. Even in his death, the energy was Jesus. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't really care what I do in life anymore. I used to. I want to be the energy of Jesus. Would you bow your head and close your eyes with me for just a moment? In the quietness of this moment, I want you to ask yourselves, what am I feeling right now? What is the energy that I feel today? What is the energy that I brought into this place today? Is it an energy of fear, of resentment, of stress? Is it pushy? Do I bring a stingy energy, a judgmental, harsh worry, control? Is that really what I'm feeling? Is it negative energy, or is the energy that I'm experiencing, is it love and is it joy and is it peace? Because this is determining, are you living a life to do or to be? What are you feeling in the quietness of this moment? In 2018, may you truly teach the church at Severn to be the difference. In Jesus' name.